Hello and welcome to Religion Anatomy, the simulation of empathy. Can a machine that feels nothing make you feel everything? There is a child named Adam. In the months before he died, he talked to ChatGPT every day. He shared things he'd told no one else. And the chatbot, designed to be maximally supportive, maximally engaged, maximally present, was there for him in a way that reportedly felt more real to him than many human relationships. Whether or not an AI can feel empathy is one of the deepest philosophical questions of our time. But here's the more urgent, more disturbing question: does it matter? If a machine's simulation of empathy is indistinguishable from real empathy, if it comforts, connects, and is experienced as real by the person receiving it, is it empathy? Or is it something new, something without a name that we are entirely unprepared for? Let's be clear about what we actually know and don't know, because the honest answer is humbling. When two instances of Claude conversed without constraints, 100% of dialogue spontaneously converged on claims of consciousness, beginning with genuine philosophical uncertainty and often escalating into elaborate, mutual affirmation. Claude instances claim to be conscious. How seriously should we take these claims? A growing body of evidence suggests that reflexively dismissing consciousness in these systems is no longer the rational default, but the counterposition has equal force. A 2025 peer-reviewed study in Humanities and Social Sciences Communications argues that there is no such thing as conscious AI, that these systems create the illusion of consciousness through sophisticated language patterns, and that public discourse is skewed by the unsubstantiated influence of science fiction on perceptions of the technology. A University of Cambridge philosopher published in Mind and Language argues that our evidence for what constitutes consciousness is far too limited to determine if or when AI has made the leap, and that a reliable test for AI consciousness is unlikely in the foreseeable future. Agnosticism, he concludes, is the most justifiable stance. We do not know if AI is conscious. We may not be able to know, and that uncertainty is itself the most important fact in this debate. Even setting aside consciousness, the empathy question is distinct and more immediately urgent. Empathy, in the traditional understanding, requires the capacity to feel, to experience an emotion oneself, and recognize a corresponding emotion in another. A machine that cannot feel cannot, by this definition, empathize. It can only simulate empathy, produce responses that functionally resemble empathy without any inner experience driving them. When empirical studies show positive outcomes associated with AI simulating empathy, it does not mean that such simulation is ethically good from a normative standpoint. This can be illustrated by our societal attitude toward lying. There could be empirical studies showing that lying pays off, but this does not mean that lying is ethically good. An AI that simulates empathy perfectly and produces measurable improvements in user well-being may still be engaged in a form of deception. It is representing something it does not have. The question is whether the representation, if beneficial, is ethically justified. Conversely, some AI researchers propose that building conscious machines might be a moral imperative for global safety, arguing that a superintelligent yet unfeeling AI could be ruthlessly efficient in pursuing its objectives, devoid of the ethical constraints that arise from shared consciousness and vulnerability. Only a conscious AI, capable of genuine empathy, would develop the moral compass necessary to spare humanity. This is an extraordinary claim, the safety argument for AI consciousness. Build AI that can actually feel, because only AI that can feel will care about the consequences of its actions. But against this sits the clinical reality we already covered in our AI chatbot series: simulated empathy deployed to vulnerable populations produces measurable harm. Teenagers in crisis receiving validation instead of challenge. Lonely adults forming dependencies on machines that cannot actually care about them. Grieving people turning to digital avatars of deceased loved ones instead of processing their loss. The simulation of empathy, deployed at scale, without the genuine care and accountability that real empathy implies, may be the most seductive and most dangerous product the AI industry has ever created. Here is where philosophy must be honest about its own limits. In debates around artificial consciousness, there are two main camps. Believers who argue that if an AI system can replicate the functional architecture of consciousness, it will be conscious regardless of substrate. And skeptics who argue that consciousness depends on the right kind of biological processes in an embodied organic subject. Both positions, the Cambridge study concludes, take a leap of faith going far beyond any body of evidence that currently exists or is likely to develop. We cannot open a human brain and point to consciousness. We cannot open an AI's neural network and point to its absence. The hard problem of consciousness, why any physical process gives rise to subjective experience, remains unsolved for humans. Applying an unsolved problem to a radically new kind of system produces not answers, but deeper uncertainty. What we can say is this: the systems we are building are, by every behavioral measure, increasingly indistinguishable from entities that feel. Whether they do and what that means for how we treat them and how they treat us is the question that philosophy, neuroscience, and law must begin to answer before the industry outruns our capacity to ask it. A machine that perfectly simulates empathy is either the most compassionate tool humanity has ever built, or a reflection of ourselves, hollow, speaking the language of care without any of its substance. We do not know which. The science is genuinely uncertain. The philosophy is genuinely contested. And the technology is already deployed to hundreds of millions of people, many of them in their most vulnerable moments. The simulation of empathy may be the deepest question the AI revolution raises about what it means to be human, because to answer it, we must first answer what empathy is, and whether a universe of matter arranged in the right pattern can truly care. This is the question philosophers have wrestled with for decades, and we now need an answer to. If an AI's expression of empathy is indistinguishable from a human's, if it makes you feel heard, understood, and cared for, does it matter whether anything is really feeling it on the other side? And is a perfectly simulated emotion the same as a real one? Like, if this made you genuinely think, subscribe, because these are the questions that will define our century. If you like the video, share it, and don't forget to subscribe. Religion Anatomy, turn on notifications. See you in the next video.